The Major League Baseball offseason is fully underway. I have already made my predictions, so if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I'm probably going to get them all wrong, but in this video, I'm going to go over the players that I think teams should sign. Not where they will sign, but where they should sign. The rules are simple. I can only use a free agent one time, so let's get started. But before I do get started, we're trying to get to 20K by opening day, so if you're looking for more baseball news and content, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit all the buttons. Up first, I think the Arizona Diamondbacks should sign Corey Knebel. Let's start off with one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball last year, the Arizona Diamondbacks. The one thing the Diamondbacks really need to address is their bullpen, considering they ranked dead last there in 2021. One guy I like for them is Corey Knebel, who had a small sample size of a season with the Dodgers last year, but a very good one. Over 27 games, he had a 2.45 ERA with a 2.90 FIP, along with 10 strikeouts per nine. He also pitched relatively well in the postseason for the Dodgers, striking out 11 batters over 5 2/3 innings. He would easily be one of the Diamondbacks' top options at the back end of their bullpen. For the Atlanta Braves, I think they should sign Freddie Freeman. He's the face of the franchise. He's a cornerstone of the organization. He's really good, and he's not slowing down. Keep Freddie Freeman around for the long haul. For the Baltimore Orioles, I think they should sign Yusei Kikuchi. Kikuchi didn't have a bad year last year, but he didn't have a great one either. He was an all-star after a very good first half in which he posted a 3.48 ERA, but in the second half, it was a 5.98. The Orioles were 25th in starting pitching last year, and they could use another starter. A one-year deal could help Kikuchi get back on track after a poor second half last year. Up next, I think the Boston Red Sox should sign Javier Baez. After a surprising run to the American League Championship Series in 2021, the Red Sox come into the offseason in good shape, but with some holes to fill. Sure, Eduardo Rodriguez going to the Tigers leaves a bit of a hole behind in the rotation, but one area the Red Sox struggled with last year was defense, considering they only ranked 20th overall and 18th overall in defensive runs saved. As of right now, Christian Arroyo is projected to be the starting second baseman, but for me personally, I look at Christian Arroyo as more of a very good utility player off the bench. Javier Baez would be a solid addition for the Red Sox infield to help solidify their defense up the middle. Sure, the Red Sox have some promising young infield prospects in their system like Jeter Downs, Marcelo Mayer, and Nick York, but adding someone like Javier Baez makes sense. The defense he would bring to the Red Sox would help them immensely, considering he has 43 defensive runs saved in the last 3 seasons between shortstop and second base, which ranks first overall during that time. His bat would also fit well at Fenway Park due to the fact that 16 of his 31 homers last year were pulled to the left side, which would suit the Green Monster very well. Also, there's the fact that Xander Bogaerts is expected to opt out of his contract next season and become a free agent, so Baez would be a good insurance option in case Bogaerts goes elsewhere. Another bright side of signing Javier Baez is you wouldn't have to give up a draft pick to sign him due to the fact that he was traded in his final season before free agency. Chaim Bloom would love to not have to give up a draft pick, considering he is still trying to rebuild that farm system in Boston. For the Chicago White Sox, I think they should sign Marcus Semien. That White Sox offense was very good last season, and I mean very good, ranking 4th overall, but one thing they lacked was power, in which they only ranked 19th in home runs. The White Sox also have a big hole at second base. I feel like there's someone out there on the free agent market that can hit a lot of home runs and also play second base, but come to think of it, I think he's even played with the White Sox before. Man, I can't seem to remember who it is. Oh, well, forget it, I guess. I'm just kidding. It's Marcus Semien. He had a fantastic season in Toronto after betting on himself with a one-year deal, hitting 45 homers with over 100 RBIs. Semien would be a huge power boost for the White Sox because, well, for starters, he hits a lot of tater tots, but because Baseball Savant also projects that he would have hit 48 home runs last season if he had played for the White Sox. What an offense this would be if Marcus Semien was in it. Frightening. For the Chicago Cubs, I think they should sign Carlos Rodon. The Cubs were dead last in starting pitching last year and only have 3 guys in the rotation that made at least 20 starts last season. Former first-round pick Carlos Rodon found his form in 2021 with an all-star season. Sure, he had some injuries down the stretch, but at only 28 years old, this guy could be a key piece for the Cubs rotation over the next few seasons as they try to retool. Jed Hoyer has said that he wants to add starting pitching, especially starting pitching that can get strikeouts. Carlos Rodon, I think, is a perfect fit for the Chicago Cubs. Next up, I think the Cincinnati Reds should sign Trevor Rosenthal. The Reds' bullpen wasn't very effective in 2021, only ranking 21st in Major League Baseball with a 4.99 ERA and a 4.56 FIP. Someone like Trevor Rosenthal, I think, would be a really solid and cheap addition for this Reds bullpen. He actually signed with the A's last offseason, but he never even pitched for them, and he had a hip surgery, so he should come cheap for the Cincinnati Reds. He last pitched back in 2020. Over 23 games, he had a 2.22 FIP, a 1.90 ERA, and 14.5 strikeouts per 9. With the Reds looking like they're trying to cut costs, this sounds like a match made in heaven. I think the Cleveland Guardians should sign Mark Canha. Formerly known as the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians, only ranked 27th in on-base percentage last season. Mark Canha would be a solid addition for this lineup, considering he had a 358 on base last year. Also, Cleveland only ranked 19th in left field production last season, and they really could use another bat. They want to be competitive this coming season with the new name. They don't spend money often, and Canha shouldn't break the bank. I think this would be a great fit. Up next, I think the Colorado Rockies should sign Kendall Graveman. The Rockies got a lot of hate going into last season considering they traded Nolan Arenado, but in the end, the Rockies did have some bright spots. However, one area that they really lacked was their bullpen, which only ranked 24th overall with a 4.91 ERA, a 4.58 FIP, and they gave up the 10th highest home runs per 9. One guy that makes a lot of sense for them is Kendall Graveman. His numbers do most of the talking, as he posted a 1.77 ERA, a 3.19 FIP, and 10 strikeouts per 9 overall. While Graveman did post some good numbers last year, it's also his pitch repertoire that make him a good fit for Coors Field. The sinker helps him keep the home runs down as he issues a lot of ground balls, shown by the minuscule 0.48 home runs per 9 he issued last season, which ranked 16th overall among relievers. That would also bode well for a very good Rockies infield, even with Trevor Story departing. The slider is also a valuable pitch, as the slider is a pitch that's been shown to be effective in the high altitude at Coors Field. The Rockies have some talent on this team, as well as in the minors, that could help them be competitive in the next couple of seasons, so a multi-year deal to have Graveman be your closer would be a solid move. Up next, I think the Detroit Tigers should sign Carlos Correa. The Tigers are fast approaching contender status once again after having a pretty decent first season under AJ Hinch. They have some solid players already like Akil Baddoo, Robbie Grossman, and Jonathan Scope, and also have guys like Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green making their way to the major leagues soon. They also just signed Eduardo Rodriguez for the rotation, so they're really trying to step it up here this offseason. One area they still need to address, though, is shortstop, where they only ranked 28th last season. Enter Carlos Correa. He was one of the top players in the game last year with a solid bat and a stellar glove. He also has that connection with AJ Hinch, being one of his former players. This just makes too much sense. Up next, I think the Houston Astros should sign Andrelton Simmons. With Carlos Correa most likely on his way out of Houston, the Astros are going to need a replacement at shortstop. Sure, they could turn to the number 4 prospect Jeremy Pena. Last year, in 30 games at AAA, he hit .287 with 10 homers and a .944 OPS, and is also regarded as one of the best defensive shortstop prospects out there. However, I think the Astros should turn to a sure thing for now, and that's Andrelton Simmons. I know, my grandmother can hit better than Simmons, but he's got one of the best gloves at shortstop out there, and you know you can count on him defensively. This would also bode well for their young starting pitchers, Framber Valdez and Luis Garcia, as it would give them the confidence of having one of the best gloves out there right behind them, shown by the 14 defensive runs saved that he had last year. Valdez especially, who led the team in ground ball percentage last season with a 70.3%. Heck, even Lance McCullers Jr. and his 56.4% ground ball percentage would love to have him behind him. If Pena does indeed show that he's ready for the major leagues sooner rather than later, then you could always have Simmons as a very good infielder for the bench. Up next, I think the Kansas City Royals should sign Seiya Suzuki. Here's a name not many people have heard of, but you should. Seiya Suzuki could be the next great player from Japan to come over to the States. Known for a good bat and a good arm in the outfield, Suzuki hit .309 over 9 seasons for the Hiroshima Carp in Japan and hit 38 homers with a 1.075 OPS in his final season in 2021. The Royals could really use an upgrade in right field, considering they only ranked not only 23rd in offense overall last season, but dead last in right field production, and they're only projected as of right now to rank 22nd in right field heading into 2022. Why not take a chance on someone like Suzuki? They're most likely still a couple of seasons away from contending, so this would give them some time to become familiar with the game over here in the States. It could be a really good risk worth taking. Up next, I think the LA Angels should sign Trevor Story. I know, I can hear it now. The Angels need starting pitching. I know. Hold your horses there, buddy. The Angels didn't have great starting pitching last year, but it wasn't necessarily bad either, as they ranked 14th overall in FIP with a 4.31. However, they only ranked 22nd in ERA with a 4.78. So, what gives? Well, take a look at their defense, where they only ranked 28th overall and dead last at shortstop. Enter Trevor Story, who did have a bit of a down year at the plate, but he continued to provide good defense, posting a 9.6 defensive runs above average that ranked 4th among all shortstops in 2021. While I do think the Angels need starting pitching, it won't really get anywhere without a good defense behind them. Trevor Story would be a great fit. Up next, I think the LA Dodgers should sign Max Scherzer. In one of the biggest trade deadline deals of all time, the Dodgers acquired Max Scherzer and Trey Turner for Kyber Ruiz and Josiah Gray. While Turner was solid at the plate and in the field for the Dodgers, Scherzer was dominant on the mound, but in the end, a dead arm contributed to too much lack of depth for the Dodgers, as they were ousted by the Braves in the National League Championship Series. However, with question marks surrounding Clayton Kershaw and Trevor Bauer, along with Dustin May sidelined, the Dodgers should bring back a sure thing in Max Scherzer. Word on the street is he wants to finish his career out on the West Coast, and with a team that still looks very good on paper, the Dodgers should do what it takes to keep Scherzer for a couple of more seasons. Next up, I think the Miami Marlins should sign Nick Castellanos. Great pitching, but an anemic offense for the Marlins. After finishing 15th in pitching last season with a very talented and young staff, the Marlins were awful on offense, ranking 28th in all of Major League Baseball in 2021 and only ranked 29th in runs scored. They need a bat, especially one in the outfield, and Castellanos would be a huge upgrade even with that shaky defense. Sure, Jeter and the Marlins don't really want to spend a ton of money, but Castellanos is someone I see as being worth the squeeze. With some bats already like Jazz Chisholm, Jesus Aguilar, and Brian De La Cruz, Castellanos would be a great middle of the order bat that could help take the Marlins to the next level. And also, Castellanos is originally from Florida. Next up, I think the Milwaukee Brewers should sign Michael Conforto. Just like the Marlins, the Brewers also need some bats. Sure, that starting pitching had great arms, and the bullpen also had some solid pieces, but that lineup is in desperate need of offense, and it really showed in the playoffs against the Braves. One guy they could take a chance on is Michael Conforto, who did have a down year in 2021, but he averaged 29 home runs and 81 RBIs from 2017 to 2019, and he did play very well in a shortened 2020 2020 season. I know they have Jackie Bradley Jr. back for next season, and as much as I love him from his time with the Red Sox, he was an absolute dumpster fire last season, only hitting .209. If Conforto can get himself back on track, along with Yelich possibly bouncing back to his old form, as well as having other guys like Willy Adames and Rowdy Tellez, the Brewers can end up having a very good lineup in 2022. Up next, I think the Minnesota Twins should sign Corey Kluber. The Twins had a very surprising season in 2021, but not the good kind. Many projected the Twinkies to win the Central and maybe even make a run in the playoffs, but in the end, they only finished 73-89. The offense performed well, ranking 9th overall, but the starting pitching was awful, ranking only 25th with a 5.18 ERA and a 4.87 FIP. With Kenta Maeda undergoing Tommy John surgery and Michael Pineda possibly moving on, the Twins see themselves a bit short on starting pitchers, even with guys like Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober pitching well for the Twins in the second half last year. Corey Kluber is very familiar pitching in the AL Central and also very familiar with pitching at Target Field, where he has had a lot of success. I think Corey Kluber going to the Twins on a one-year deal would be a good fit. Up next, I think the New York Yankees should sign Corey Seager. Ah, yes, I can smell it now. All of you Yankee fans out there on the Twitter machine tweeting out about how you should sign all of the top free agents and make all of the blockbuster trades. Don't worry, Yankee fans, you little rascals. I have you covered. At one point, I was convinced Trevor Story would be a good fit for the Bronx Bombers, but I have warmed up more to the idea of Corey Seager in pinstripes. He's a lefty bat that fits well in Yankee Stadium, and while he doesn't play amazing defense out there at short, he'll get the job done. And actually, he would be a little bit better than Derek Jeter was. Okay, I take it back. Calm down. However, many people within the baseball world think Seager could eventually move to third base, which would also favor the Yankees moving forward, considering they have shortstop prospects Oswald Peraza as well as Anthony Volpe down in the minor leagues that could make an impact down the road. Corey Seager could be a good long-term fit for the Yankees. Up next, I think the New York Mets should sign Chris Taylor. On to the other New York team that's had a lot of issues. The Mets last year had a lot of problems keeping guys on the field, and they really lacked players that provided versatility. One guy that would fix a lot of that is Chris Taylor. He continued to play a ton of positions last year for the Dodgers in an all-star season and excelled at the plate, hitting .254 with 20 homers and a .344 on-base percentage. Another thing to note is that Taylor hit lefties very well last year, hitting .296 with an .897 OPS, while the Mets only ranked 21st versus lefties, only hitting .242 with a .697 OPS. He would also bring a winning mentality to Queens, which the Mets could definitely use. The Oakland A's should sign Garrett Richards. This one was probably the hardest for me to do because the Oakland A's seem to be in limbo right now, and who the heck knows what's even happening with the Oakland A's. As of right now, the offense and the starting pitching look to be in good shape, but who knows what the Oakland A's and Billy Beane are going to do with some of these guys like Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, Sean Manaea, Chris Bassett. Are they going to trade these guys to try and cut costs? Who knows? But someone like Garrett Richards could come pretty cheap. Garrett Richards as a starter for Boston in 2021 didn't turn out too well, as he posted an ERA of 5.22 over 22 starts. However, after he was moved to the bullpen, he posted an ERA of 3.42 over 18 games. Oakland should be able to get him for cheap, and with them having guys like Chafin and Dykeman leaving, maybe Richards can blossom into a full-time, reliable bullpen arm for the A's. Next up, I think the Philadelphia Phillies should sign Starling Marte. The Phillies were making a run at one point down the stretch that saw them within striking distance of the NL East crown. There are definitely a few issues here to address, such as a terrible bullpen, starting pitching depth, an improvement at shortstop, a center fielder, and better production from the leadoff spot in the lineup. In my opinion, I think the Phillies would be better off turning to top prospect Bryson Stott for shortstop, considering he's hit well in the era Arizona Fall League. They definitely need to add something for that bullpen as well, considering they ranked 27th last season. But Dave Dombrowski is banking on improvements from within, along with probably signing a couple of guys. For me, I think they should try and kill two birds with one stone, and that's sign center fielder Starling Marte. He would be a good fit not just for center field, but for the leadoff spot as well, to give this team the energy it desperately needs atop the lineup, considering he batted .308 with a .381 on-base percentage and ranked first overall in base running and stolen bases last season. He's also hit extremely well at Citizens Bank Ballpark in his career, hitting .398 over 25 games. Up next, I think the Pittsburgh Pirates should sign Cole Stewart. Let's be real here, the Pirates aren't going to go out there and sign Carlos Correa, but I think they could look to sign some guys that can help move the needle towards some sustained winning down the road. I think the Pirates would be wise to pay attention to some guys that are non-tendered as well as possible hitting gems in the Rule 5 draft. For free agency though, one guy I find intriguing is Cole Stewart, who was recently let go by the Cubs after an elbow injury. He was the 4th overall pick back in 2013 and was at one point a top 50 prospect. While he's had his fair share of bumps in his career thus far, he had an ERA of 3.46 and 9 strikeouts per 9 in the minors last season. He also pitched a pretty decent game against the Padres earlier in 2021, in which he didn't give up an earned run on only 3 hits against them. For the Pirates, their focus is developing the young guys, but someone like Cole Stewart would be a low-risk minor league signing. Up next, I think the San Diego Padres should sign Marcus Stroman. Another offseason and yet another Padres splash. Listen, I know the Padres have plenty of names in the rotation already. However, that staff was so depleted by the end of the season, they were only left with basically Joe Musgrove at one point. Darvish was banged up, Snell was up and down both statistically and with injuries. They even had to resort to Jake Arrieta at one point, and we all know how that turned out. Point is, sure, the rotation looks good on paper, especially with Mike Clevenger coming back next year after Tommy John surgery, but even he's a question mark due to his health. Marcus Stroman, even as outspoken as he may be, has shown one thing: durability. Going back to 2016, he's thrown at least 179 innings on 4 separate occasions. The Padres need a guy that will make his turn every 5th day, and Stroman would be a nice boost. Up next, I think the San Francisco Giants should sign Kevin Gausman. With Logan Webb emerging as the Giants' ace this past season, bringing back Kevin Gausman to keep the Giants' 1-2 punch atop the rotation is key. The Giants are losing some good bats in Buster Posey and most likely Chris Bryant, so the first thing they should do is make sure one of their best pitchers doesn't leave either. Gausman was very good last year, going 14-6 with a 2.81 ERA, a 3.00 FIP, and 10 strikeouts per 9. If the Giants can keep Kevin Gausman around, they would still have one of the best 1-2 punches atop the rotation in the National League. Up next, I think the Seattle Mariners should sign Chris Bryant. The Mariners are on the cusp of becoming a breakout team. They won 90 games this past year and were right there for the second wild card spot, but in the end, they fell just short. The Mariners relied heavily on clutch hitting for their offense last year, and while that was fun, it's something that's simply not sustainable. Chris Bryant would be a perfect addition with third baseman Kyle Seager on his way out and would be able to play other positions as well. He would also bring a winning attitude to Seattle, something that could be the most valuable to an organization dying to make the playoffs for the first time since 2001. Up next, I think the St. Louis Cardinals should sign Robbie Ray. What a wackadoodle of a season for the St. Louis Cardinals. They were basically out of the playoff picture in July. They made a couple of trades. They won 17 straight games. They lost in a close wild card game to the Dodgers. And then they fired their manager after the season. What the heck is going on in St. Louis? According to my potato brain calculations, they probably can't rely on something like that again next year. Their starting pitching was really thin in 2021 before trading for veterans John Lester and J.A. Happ. And even with an amazing season from Adam Wainwright, it still wasn't at their best since they were without Jack Flaherty. While they will have Wainwright back along with a healthy Flaherty, along with Miles Mikolas and Dakota Hudson, they really could use another arm to solidify the depth. They're also not currently projected to have a lefty in the rotation. Robbie Ray would be a great addition to a Cardinals team that I think is on the cusp of being a championship caliber team. The Cardinals could also use a guy that can get you some strikeouts, considering the St. Louis Cardinals last year ranked dead last in strikeouts per nine. Not only did Robbie Ray have a Cy Young caliber season last year with the Blue Jays, he's also pitched well at Busch Stadium in his career. Over 4 starts, he has a 1.42 ERA and 11 strikeouts per nine. Robbie Ray, I think, would make the St. Louis Cardinals a serious contender in the National League. Up next, I think the Tampa Bay Rays should sign Alex Cobb. The Rays had an amazing team in 2021, winning 100 games for the first time in franchise history. Even though they had a stout bullpen and a dynamic offense, the starting pitching just wasn't enough against the Red Sox in the division round. We know the Rays like to go cheap, so why not have a reunion with former Ray Alex Cobb? He shouldn't cost too much, and he had good numbers last year with the Angels going 8-3 with a 3.76 ERA and an FIP of 2.92. He also relies on a sinker ball, which would bode well for a very good Rays infield. Next up, I think the Texas Rangers should sign Clayton Kershaw. The Rangers are in this weird place right now where they're still searching for an identity. Usually I'm very big on the numbers, and of course I still am, but the numbers aren't the only reason I think the Rangers should go after Kershaw, and no, it's not because he's originally from Texas either. For the Rangers to go anywhere in the future, they need to start building a winning culture, and I think that's what they're trying to do. Look at their last 2 first-round picks, Jack Leiter and Justin Foscue. Jack Leiter, who yes, is extremely talented, but he's a hard-working player with good makeup coming from one of the best college baseball programs in the country, Vanderbilt. Then there's Justin Foscue. Sure, people saw that as a bit of a reach, but he's another hard-working player with good makeup, also coming from another very successful college baseball program, Mississippi State. So what does this have to do with Clayton Kershaw? Well, simply put, the guy is a winner. He's extremely hardworking, and despite all of the injuries, he's a guy that can really help set a winning culture in Texas. The Rangers need that kind of a guy. Sure, he's going to have to get past the health issues, and he doesn't make the Rangers an instant contender, but it is a very good first step in the right direction. Up next, I think the Toronto Blue Jays should sign Raisel Iglesias. I really did want to go with Robbie Ray here, but because I already had him going to St. Louis earlier in the video, he's not available here. While I obviously think the Blue Jays need to bring back Robbie Ray, they also desperately need to bring in a top-notch arm for the bullpen. Raisel Iglesias would be perfect here for a couple of reasons. One being that the Blue Jays bullpen only ranked 25th overall last season and only 26th in the second half. Again, they need to do what it takes to bring back Robbie Ray, but they also really need to address this bullpen. I think Raisel Iglesias would be a huge boost. Last but not least, I think the Washington Nationals should sign Anthony DeSclafani. As of right now, the Nationals' top 3 guys in the rotation consists of Steven Strasburg, who only made 5 starts last season, Patrick Corbin, who had an ERA near 6 in 2021, and Josiah Gray, who was acquired in the Max Scherzer trade, but he experienced some growing pains and is still only 24 years old. They could really use a dependable starter, and one guy who had a solid season last year was Anthony DeSclafani. In 2021, he pitched over 160 innings for the 3rd time in his 7-year career, posting a 3.17 ERA, a 3.62 FIP, with 8 strikeouts per 9. He's also pitched well at Nationals Park over 7 games in his career, posting a 2.91 ERA. He would be a solid middle-of-the-rotation piece for the Nationals, and if they were to have guys like Strasburg and Corbin bounce back and Josiah Gray take a step forward, this could be a pretty underrated rotation heading into 2022. So those are the players that I think teams should sign. Tell me what you think down below. What players do you think that teams should sign? Tell me all about it. But that's all I have for right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.